get rolling here pretty quickly here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get things started. I'm Patrick Gallagher, and I'd like to welcome all of you to this week's featured webinar presented by Corvid by Wix. Corvid by Wix is an open development platform that accelerates the way you build web applications. But before we get started with speaker introductions, I have some housekeeping items to review on our agenda. So first of all, we're already taking care of the welcome. Second of all, we're going to be doing Q&A at the end of the session. So please put your questions in the Q&A. On the right-hand side of your viewer at the top, you have some tabs. You have chat, you have Q&A, you have polls, and you have handouts. So on that, you can either put your questions in chat or you can put them directly in the Q&A. I would love to hear from you and hear any questions that you have during Meredith's presentation. She's going to handle those questions at the end. There are handouts available. They will be available in the handouts section of the viewer. And the webinar will be recorded. So you will be able to see this, the session that you're watching now. You'll be able to review it in 24 to 48 hours. You'll get another email, or you can also then forward that email onto your coworkers or anybody else that you feel might gain some interest or gain some information from the presentation. So please feel free to do that. So joining us today is Meredith Hassett. As Corvid's developer advocate, Meredith shares her experience and knowledge in web development and has worked on applications for financial institutions, nonprofits, and travel groups. She's a FIRST robotics alumni and has worked on integrated technology solutions and designing novelty products. So without further delay, please give your undivided attention to Meredith and the webinar.
Thanks, Patrick. Let me go ahead and switch over to my slides here. So good morning, evening, afternoon to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today with Dev Network. Today, we're going to be focusing on building an optimized online payment solution and to help you optimize your transactions depending on what your payment provider is. We'll be talking a little bit about the payment providers available from a bunch of third parties across the globe and why you might need different payment providers for your web applications. We'll also look at an example of building out a custom payment solution using Stripe. This is only applicable for US and Canadian transactions. So if you are doing transactions outside of those regions, you will need to be using your own third-party provider. But just to give you guys a taste of how simple it is to add an external payment solution to your website, whether it is something like Stripe or maybe another solution that is available in your region. We'll also look at examples of how you can customize the cart experience for your users to ensure that your end users are getting the business is still being. So this can be an example of maybe having to ensure that your shipping costs or taxes on the transaction are appropriate depending on the transaction size to make sure you're optimizing for your business's transactions. So let's go ahead and dive in. Patrick already gave a pretty nice introduction about who I am, but just to share a little bit about myself, a little bit more, because I feel like it's a pretty vague introduction. I am Meredith Hassett. I am based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I am a front-end developer by trade, so I studied computer engineering in school and have been focused mostly on the front end of applications. But just because I focus on the front end doesn't mean I think the integrations and the back end are any less important. I just prefer to someone else to do the heavy lifting, which is why we're looking at things like Stripe today. I do a lot with Twilio as well. I've been building an ESPN app to try to win my fantasy league. It didn't really help me, but we're about to go into the playoff season, and I'm doing okay if the NFL can get their act together and we can actually continue playing. So trying out different applications and utilizing different technologies available out there to help myself or help other businesses as well. I am a developer advocate, as Patrick mentioned, so I'm here to help explore the world of Corvid and then also answer any of your guys' questions. So if you have anything that you want to learn more about Corvid, I'll share more contact information at the end, but you're always welcome to connect with me on Twitter. I am ML Hassett there, and LinkedIn as well. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions about this webinar or Corvid in general. I'm always happy to share my knowledge and experience. Today's agenda of what we're going to take a look at is we're going to take a look at what the state of the e-commerce world is today. A lot has changed in 2020, and we're about to enter into 2021. And the future is still pretty uncertain at this point, right? We don't know when online shopping and in-store shopping is going to come back available here in the Bay Area. We are just entering into a second lockdown. So restaurants have just closed again. And we don't know, we thought we were trending towards being better, and then everything kind of fell backwards a little bit here. So we don't really know what 2021 is going to look like. We're talking about maybe going back to offices in early Q2 next year. Maybe that won't happen either. So we want to take a look at the state of e-commerce today and see what we can prepare for and what kind of the market is expecting to happen. But I'll always take this with a grain of salt because we have lived in a very, very uncertain world for the past 10 months, and we still don't really know what's going to happen next year. So we need to be prepared for anything that comes our way, which is why I want to talk to you about Corvid too, because it's going to be really helpful as you maybe need to make these rapid pivots for your platforms and find solutions that work for your customers or yourself to grow your business, build a new business, or explore other opportunities for your business. We're going to look at why we might need some customized payment solutions. So we'll talk through some of the reasons why you might be exploring different customized payment opportunities and kind of diving into a little bit about what to expect for your users when working on these customized payment solutions. And then we'll dive into a little bit more of what Corvid is, and we'll share kind of the platform as a whole. If you're familiar with Wix, this is a whole new tool inside of Wix, and we have an exciting demo for you guys there. So we'll build actually a custom checkout solution with Corvid towards the end of this demo. And then after that, we'll be open for Q&A. So we want to take a look at the state of e-commerce today. E-commerce is a really rapidly growing space. According to Forbes, it actually encompasses 14.5% of all sales in the US retail market, which is a large jump up from retail sales in 2019 when it was only 11%. We also have seen over 137% growth in the e-commerce space year over year. Where that growth was trending significantly slower, 2020 has required us to move a lot of our retail businesses online and has required us to continue to find alternate solutions for that in-person shopping experience. According to the US Census as well, we have seen a 30% or 35% jump in retail or e-commerce retail quarter after quarter. So it is the fastest growing space right now in terms of retail markets and helping your your business grow. It is an exploding business. There was a little bit of a back turn in Q3 because I think a lot of places were opening up and they were trying to encourage in-person shopping again. But again, we're now entering into flu and cold season, especially here in North America. And a lot of places are seeing rapid spikes in everything that's going on. So I would expect that we're going to see those numbers for e-com jump again. I think I just saw an announcement on LinkedIn that Amazon had its best Black Friday ever and Cyber Monday. Because as you can expect, as we just go into this lockdown and everyone's kind of staying at home again, we're all doing our online shopping, and online retail sales are going to continue to jump through this holiday season. So it's definitely something that you can take an opportunity to be part of. We see this at my Dev Network Enterprise presentation. You saw me talk about an e-commerce solution that spun up in a weekend because there was a announcement at their business. They were a lawn maintenance shop, and they had an opportunity to start selling t-shirts and merchandise and capitalize on additional capital that they could be utilizing. And they were able to spin up an e-commerce store just in that weekend. So there's a lot of opportunity to capitalize on the e-commerce market, especially as things are changing on a day-to-day basis. So it's really important that we start exploring this. And Wix is really building into the e-commerce or buying into the e-commerce as a platform solution, and it's something that's really important to us. And we're seeing a lot of growth. So this was the live transactions over this holiday shopping weekend from Black Friday to Cyber Day. So we were seeing 500% growth in gifts, 200% growth in garden and market, 85% growth in electronics and computers. So there's a lot of growth happening here, and we're seeing a lot of real-time transactions. E-commerce is something that is super valuable, and businesses are utilizing to help grow a lot of their customer base. And they're doing it all over the globe here. So this is mostly US and EMEA. We see a little bit of South America happening there as well. But there's a lot of online shopping growth that is happening in the world, and people are utilizing it, especially during this holiday season. When it comes to building a custom checkout experience, you may be asking why you need to do it. There's a lot of off-the-shelf solutions. If you in-person store, maybe you already have an e-commerce solution that you're utilizing. Remember that there's a lot of things to consider when building a checkout solution. If you did have an in-person store and you now need to bring it online, you may want to be utilizing the tools that you already had. So instead of building a custom solution all over from the beginning, you want to be using the integrations that are available from your Stripe store that you are using, your Square store, or any other payment provider that you are already using in your retail business. This will make your housekeeping and bookkeeping a lot simpler if you are utilizing a solution that you already have. It also continues to give your users a consistent experience. So if they were using a Square checkout experience in your store and now you move that online, it's going to feel very similar and very comfortable to them, because it's going to feel just like that similar to that in-person solution or in-person shopping experience that they had, but now in an online retail. And it also continues to help your business or your customer's business. Depending on where you are located, you have different needs for your transactions. Not every country accepts every single different type of payment method. We see this a lot in during my time at Corvid. I see a lot of questions of asking, like, how do I integrate with this Romanian payment experience, the South African payment experience, Israeli payment experience, US payment experience. So depending on your local needs, Japan presents a whole new market because online payments isn't really a thing in Japan. Depending on your different local needs, you may need to provide different payment solutions depending on what market you're trying to capitalize on. And while we try to provide you an out-of-the-box experience for most of those markets, we haven't captured every single payment market, and no solution provider has captured every single payment market. So you may be required, depending on your local needs, to utilize a custom payment solution or another third-party vendor that's available in your region. If you want to be able to support worldwide payments, you may need to expand beyond, because as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at Stripe, which this payment method is effective for US and Canadian transactions. But if you want to do worldwide sales, that's not going to be sufficient for you, and you may need an additional provider to help you support global payments. And again, depending on the local markets, you may need a different payment solution depending on your sales in one country to another. You want to also continue to provide the best possible user experience. So some out-of-the-box solutions may not be the best, or they do require customization. For example, we have an online vacation booking system that utilizes our payments and Stripe payments as well. But in order to get the most effective booking, they need to ask a lot of questions during that checkout experience. Normally in a checkout experience, right, like you just have your cart and then you say check out. But when you're booking an online vacation, you need to know how many people are attending this vacation, what dates are people trying to attend, are there any custom arrangements that we need to set up for this vacation? And you need to enable a really customized user checkout experience to ensure users know exactly what product they are purchasing and how to build out that entire experience for them to make sure they're receiving the optimal experience. So utilizing a custom payment solution will enable you to customize what user inputs you may be feeding in to your solution to make sure that the user is able to provide everything that they need to about the custom object that they are purchasing, whether it's a vacation, maybe it's a custom phone case, or any sort of other custom product. A customized checkout experience might be required to ensure that the users feel comfortable and secure in knowing what they've purchased. You also may want to enable multiple currencies. So again, if you have a global market that you're trying to capture, or you want to even accept multiple payments within your market, you might need to incorporate a couple different payment methods or have a custom ability to change your currency on your site. And so building a custom checkout and payment experience that enables multiple currencies may require a multiple currency solution. Some things to consider when you're looking to build out your custom solution are your shipping demands. So do you need to enforce a cart minimum to ensure that your shipping is cost effective? Do you need to limit the market that you are shipping to again, make sure that your margins make sense, and figuring out kind of how your shipping solution plays into your cart experience, and making sure that users aren't disappointed because they bought too few things and now it's really expensive to ship to them. So maybe you have to charge them extra for shipping. So enabling a really symbiotic relationship between cart and shipping. We have seasonal cycles as well in our e-commerce markets. So as I mentioned, it is the holiday season right now. So we are expecting a lot of online retail experience. You may need to have bigger warehouse demands right now and be prepared for that. So in order to handle kind of how your markets are changing depending on the season, for example, I just purchased something that is actually out of stock, but they didn't want to say it was out of stock. So instead of saying it's out of stock online, they said it was a pre-order experience where they're expecting their warehouse to be refilled after this holiday season. So they'll be able to ship it in February. So therefore, I was able to get a customized checkout experience where I knew that even though I was purchasing today and it's technically out of stock today, I could still purchase it at that Cyber Monday price and expect to receive it a little bit later. So by adapting to that cyclical seasonal cycle, even if you have warehouse demands you can't meet, you can still provide the user with the proper experience to make sure that they know that their product and their order was received, but they might see a little bit of a delay when it comes to shipping that product. You want a flexible custom checkout experience mentioned with your online booking experience. That might be something that's important to consider. Again, if it's any sort of custom product that your users are building and paying for, you may require a custom checkout experience. Or if there's just additional information you need, are there any additional shipping requirements that you have? Are you shipping to a business or a residence? You want to make sure that you're getting the correct information from your end users to ensure that you as a business know how to operate smoothly and give everyone what they paid for, and your users are informed about what's going on. Similarly, if you need any custom information, such as where is this item going to, or any additional shipping instructions, you may need to incorporate those into your site. And then you also need to consider where they are shopping from. So this is not just region, but this is also device. So most actual online shopping experiences happen on a mobile device. So if your store is not optimized for mobile, you may lose out on a lot of opportunity for business. So it's important to remember to consider, are you building your application and your online store to be only web friendly? Because if it's only for desktops, you may be missing out on a really large margin of your business, because over 50% of people are shopping online from their phones and doing their purchases and transactions on their phones. So it's important to make sure that you are you're building your website experience and your checkout experience, that it's comfortable and easy to function on mobile. If you think about like a cart experience traditionally on your desktop, you see your list of items that you are trying to purchase on one side of the page and your cart total on the other side of the page. On a mobile device, this would be a very complicated experience to look at. So that's something that you want to make sure that you consider when building out your website, because if you don't optimize it for mobile, it's going to be a really difficult user experience for your end users. Tools that you can use to do this. This is where Corvid comes into play. So Corvid is our JavaScript web development platform on top of your Wix site. So if you've used Wix before, you know that it's a drag and drop editor. It's really easy to add components or even stores to your website. But if you need to customize that experience beyond just kind of the standard out-of-the-box Wix solution, Corvid enables you to utilize any JavaScript knowledge that you already have to continue to build out these solutions, build third-party integrations, add customizations to your UI. And it's really handy because it utilizes knowledge that you probably already have from any JavaScript development you've done before. It has an entirely built-in IDE, so this enables you to actually do code maintenance really nicely because your code for your page is directly there on your page in that built-in cloud IDE. Your code is already saved and stored for you, and version management is handled in the code as well, so you can roll back to earlier versions of the code. We have integrated databases too, so this is really nice if you're working with a content provider where they can utilize an ID or a visual UI version of your store's products that you have, but then you can really easily simply add query integrations to those databases to your website without having to do any tunneling, any additional database setup, any additional authentication handling between your database provider and your website. So having that integrated database is really handy because it does support both your content providers and any business people that might be looking at your database, as well as you as a developer, to make your life for developing and building queries and building data-driven sites a lot simpler. It is running entirely on a serverless Node.js instance. So again, you can utilize all of your favorite tools. We have integrated NPM packages. So we'll be looking at Stripe's NPM package, for example, today. But if you need to utilize any of those existing tools out there already in the NPM world, you can bring them in because we are running on a Node.js instance. And last but not least, it is a zero setup production ready environment. So this means you have no additional maintenance costs for setting up servers, enabling any sort of integrations between data, as I mentioned, database and server. Your hosting is all combined there in one for you. So instead of having all these additional costs that you have to manage all over the place, you can have a nice simple package that's ready to go and be production ready and provide you with security that you should expect from any website, especially when doing payments. Payments are a very security finicky experience where it's really important that you're making sure that you're not accidentally exposing any customer information. It's really critical that you provide a nice, secure solution for your end users. Corvid is able to do this by providing a really nice, robust tool set where you have that cloud-based IDE that I mentioned. So all of your code is stored in the cloud and you have access to it. It's running on that Node.js server. So again, you get access to all of your favorite NPM packages and modules. You can utilize and create HTTP functions. So if you need to do anything with building APIs that are available from your site or incorporating them into your site, it's really simple to do that as well. We have integrated databases, as I mentioned, and it's a MongoDB. So it's going to look like a relational database on your website, but it actually is a MongoDB running behind it. We have integrated marketing tools. So again, you as a developer get this whole robust set of tools. We even have site monitoring and secrets manager that we'll look at as well. But if you have any business side of the house, they have a lot of email marketing tools and SEO tools already built into the platform. And you can create data-driven pages as well by using those integrated databases to make a dynamic web experience. It is a fully managed solution. So you have your application layer, which is that visual app builder. So again, if you have designers in-house, your designers can go and create those visual UIs, and then you can utilize the built-in IDE to add additional code to those UIs using our front-end APIs that we expose. You also get access to a lot of business solutions like CRMs and content management, and you can enable data binding to, again, create that data-driven dynamic user experience. We have a storage layer, so that's our integrated databases that we call Wix Data. It allows for really easy CRUD operations from the UI. We have APIs that expose all of that. So it's really easy to do that. It also supports video storage in our database as well, and you can easily add database hooks, do query aggregations, and connect to external collections, all while setting different permission layers depending on who needs access to that data. And finally, there is a compute layer, which is our Node.js server, which enables you to incorporate things like HTTP functions. So again, building and exposing APIs for your website, scheduling, using job schedulers if you need any functions that need to run daily, incorporating those NPM packages that you may need, secrets manager, as well as site monitoring to make sure that your site is healthy and up and running. And without further ado, I think we've heard me talk enough about the product, so let's go ahead and dive right in. So I'm going to take us over to a website that I have already pre-built here with Wix. This website is a Kickstarter style site to showcase how easy it is to build out an entirely custom payment solution here on Wix. So users are able to come in and back this project, are able to provide their pledge that they're with. So if we take a look at this in preview mode, which is our version of QA, so it's really easy to get to your QA version of your site, we're able to add custom pledge amounts here and then continue on to our payment solution. But if you want to enable a minimum payment amount here, so if we go back to our home page, I already have a little bit of code written to enable the passing of data from page to page. So you're going to see that here already. So we're able to grab the value of a field really simply utilizing the built-in Wix UI APIs. So this $W, you can think of it kind of like our version of jQuery for our website. It is the way that we select different UI elements on our page. So $W says I want to grab a UI element, and then we pass in the ID of the element. So in this case, it is pledge amount. So when we go ahead and find the pledge amount field, it's going to be down here in our pledge amount input field. So this is a UI input field where we can actually get user input and grab that data and pass it along. So in this case, we can easily grab the value of an input field and utilize that to pass along to an additional page. So utilizing Wix location, for example, this is another API that enables us to do migration between our pages, or sorry, navigation between our pages. And we can also pass in query router to our different pages. So in this case, we pass along the pledge dollars that the user want to pledge. We could also utilize storage. So we have placed storage from a different API that you can use too, if there's something a little bit more sensitive that you don't want to pass along in the UI. So in order to prohibit the payment experience from happening if we don't have a payment value met that we want, we can actually go ahead and add an additional if statement around this location. So if I go ahead and say if the pledged dollars is less than our minimum amount, so maybe we don't want anyone to pledge less than, I don't know, let's say $15, because it's not going to be beneficial for us for the amount of taxes and back-end work that we have to do to process a pledge of that amount. We can then go ahead and, oops, and then we'll go ahead and grab this and else. Oops, sorry. Ah. So then we want to go ahead and maybe want to put an error message. So let's go ahead and just console log pledge too low. Otherwise, we can go ahead and actually Otherwise, we can go ahead and actually check. We can actually go ahead and navigate to the new page. I'm not sure. Oops. Okay, so we might actually need to parse int from this. And then we can, as you can see, we have standard JavaScript functionality here too as well. So we're able to, as it mentioned, we get standard error handling that we would expect. And then we can go ahead and parse int to make sure that we're actually making sure it is an integer that we're comparing another integer to. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So if I try to go ahead and pledge $10, we should go ahead and see an error message. I apologize, I'm having a weird error here. I apologize, you guys were getting a weird error. This is not the page that we're looking at. Oh, whoops. I think I see what happened here. I didn't have enough curly braces. There we go. Yep, okay, I forgot to close out. I was using... Oh, I see, okay. There we go. Curly braces. So I'm going to go ahead and try to continue here. And we should see a message here in our console saying pledge too low. So you got to make sure that you close out all of your functions too. Oops. So, but then if I change this to $20, I'm going to go ahead and be able to continue on to my next page and actually see that my pledge is $20 here. So you can enable a customized experience when it comes to moving from different pages to enable or to prevent users from trying to continue on in a checkout process based off of the value, as long as you make sure that you actually close all of your functions. So once we ensure that a user has pledged enough to make it a valuable experience for us to try to process this payment and go through any taxes that we may need to for that experience, we can actually go on to our fill in your details page and collect this payment information from that user. So in this case, we need to collect their credit card number, their expiration date of their credit card, as well as the CVV code on the back of their credit card. And we can use all of that information to actually process the payment. So I already have a function stubbed out here on our front end. Oh, I don't. My bad. So I'm going to go ahead and create a function on our back end called submit payments, where we can find our backend code over here in our code files. So here's where we can create backend code. So this is anything that you like resource intensive that you don't want running on your UI, any utility functions that maybe you're going to be reutilizing over and over again, and that might be in your public area as well. Anything that has API keys, you're going to want your backend code too, because it is private transactions. So you want to make sure that you are anything that has use of information here in your backend code. And here I have a function already stubbed out called submit payments. This is going to take in the different values that we need to actually go ahead and process this user's payment, and all of this information we're collecting on this UI screen. So what I need to do is actually go back to my UI code. So I can go to my page here. I need to import one more thing, and that's going to be that function called submit payment. And that's coming from my backend code. So I just need to go ahead and navigate to my backend Stripe file here. So that way, this is how I go ahead and export functions on my backend and then utilize them on my front end of my code. So no additional setup needed here. It's really easy to import. You just import it kind of like any other Wix API that we have available. And once that's stubbed out, I'm going to go ahead and save myself a little time. I already have this pre-written for me. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. So I need to go ahead and pass in the pledge amount, which we're getting from, again, the user input, the user's name, zip code, because again, we need to validate that this transaction is coming from the US, card number, expiration date, and CV, and pass all of that information along to our backend to do our transactions. This is going to be an asynchronous function, so we have to wait for a response to it. So I already have some error handling stubbed out here for myself as well, because I want to focus more on the back end of the transaction. And in here, we're just going to wait for the response. If there's an error, we're going to log the response. Otherwise, we're going to open a light box to say thank you and tell them that the payment was accepted. So once we have our front end code stubbed out like this, we are passing all of our information to our back end. We can actually go ahead and fill out that back end code. So if I flip back over here to my code files, so just something to keep in mind. So our page code is going to be all of our front end or UI code, and then our code files is all of our back end or public utility functions that we might have. On the back end code files, you can see that we also have a package manager here. So this is where you can maintain and install new NPM packages. So no more maintaining a package.js file anymore. We'll handle all of that for you in this package manager that we have built in. So I can easily install a new package by clicking on that install new package. Go ahead and search for the package that you want. So in this case, we want to install Stripe. I'm going to go ahead and install it. And as you can see, I now already have Stripe installed, so I can already start working with it on my backend code. So in the backend Stripe file that I already have created, I'm going to go ahead and expand this. We want to go ahead and import Stripe into our code so we can start using that helper package. So we just want to go ahead and import Stripe from Stripe. And so that's going to enable us to work with the Stripe helper package. Another thing that we're going to need to import is our backend manager, which is where our APIs key. It's like Wix secrets backend Wix. So this is going to enable us to work with our backend secrets manager, which if you need to store any secrets, those are just going to be in your page dashboard under settings. We want to go down to the bottom to secrets manager. Here you can also see release management, site history, site monitoring, and secrets manager. So any of those backend functionality that you need to maintain for your website, we can go here to secrets manager, store a secret, Stripe API key. And then I have my API key, which I'm going to go ahead and plop into here. And as you can see, it's hidden, so you guys can't actually see that API key. So this is a really great way to store those secrets in a really nice, secure setting. And now that I have my Stripe API key, I'm able to use the backend secrets manager to actually retrieve that key. So if I just go ahead and create a new constant called API key, I can set that equal to await my Wix secrets backend dot get secret, and I just pass in my secret name here, so Stripe API key. And I can use that API key then to initialize my Stripe client from my Stripe helper NPM module that I just installed. So I have my new Stripe client, which is going to be a new Stripe instance where Stripe requires that you pass in the API key. If you're ever wondering how to initialize a client when it comes to working with these NPM helper modules, you can always check out the documentation from your package manager here. So if I manage installed packages, you can see the documentation here. So it's always handily nearby if you ever need it. So once we have our Stripe client initiated, what we also need to process our payment is our credit card object. So Stripe requires a credit card object that requires the credit card number, the CVV code, and then the expiration date. So we can just go ahead and create a new credit card object. And we want to call this number, which is going to take in our card number, which is one of our passed-in fields here. We need our CV code, which is going to be our CV. We need our expiration month, which is our expiration month. And again, if you're ever wondering what this format is that Stripe requires, because this is the key value pairing that Stripe does require for its credit card payments, you do need to, you can again check the documentation and it'll tell you exactly what it's expecting for the key for that. So in this case, like expiration year, it should be expiration underscore year, and that's how it's going to know to parse out the year value. So now that we have our credit card as well, we can go ahead and start creating our payment method. And then we can use that payment method to create a payment intent. So Stripe is always going to be a multiple handling when you're going to be doing your payment. So the first thing, you can either use existing customers to create your payments. So you can search your customer database, see if that payment method's already in there, and reuse that payment initiation to start a new payment intent. If it's just a one-time transaction like we're doing here with our Kickstarter style site, then we can go ahead and just create a new payment method that we're going to need for our payment intent as well. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new payment method. And that payment method, we're going to need to, I'm going to wrap this in a try catch. We always want to do a little bit of error handling here. We want to make sure that if the payment doesn't go through, that we are making sure that we stop the process at any point and return to the user. So I'm going to go ahead and say my payment method is equaled to my Stripe client's payment method. And we're going to be using the create method here. So create enables us to create a new payment method. We're going to create a new card. So it does require a type. So in this case, it's card. And then we also need the card that we're going to use then. So when our type is set to card, we need to actually pass in a credit card. So that's why we created that credit card object earlier. So this will create a payment method with our Stripe client that we can then utilize in our payment intent, where a payment intent is where we actually go through with processing that transaction. If we do get an error here, we can do some more intense error handling, but in this case, I will just return an error because we want to stop the payment method, the payment process, if we don't have a successful card creation, because that means that we aren't going to actually be able to go through with the intent to create the payment. Once we actually have that payment method created and ready to go, we are going to then, once it's returned, we then want to check to see if the payment method returns an ID, because that's the ID that we need to start the payment intent. So the payment intent then looks for that payment method that we created and tries to utilize it for the payment creation. So we want to check to see if payment ID is there. And if it is there, then we can go ahead and start another try catch. Oops. We're going to do another call here. And just return error. So this is where your error handling would normally go. In this case, we want to utilize a different Stripe API. So we're going to be using the Stripe client. Oops. Payment intents. So this is an intent to make a payment. So normally you can handle this in a multi-step transaction. So you can, this is because we're doing a US Canada only one, I can do this in one go, but this is where you would do a payment intent creation. This is where you would do a lot of that checking. Is the zip code valid for the credit card that you're utilizing? Is the currency correct? Do I need to do any transitions of the currency here? So normally when you do a payment intent creation, it's going to be a multi-step process, a lot of handshaking back and forth between Stripe. But because we're going to do a US only payment, we're going to be able to do it in one go just for simplicity and time's sake today. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new payment method. And this payment method is going to take in our payment intent is going to take in a payment method, which is why we had to create it before. And this is going to be our payment method.id. So that's going to inform it which payment we're utilizing. This has that information about the credit card and the type, and it's in a form that Stripe recognizes and can work with. We also need to put in our amount, but if you remember from before, our amount is actually in a string format. So we do actually need to change that over into a integer. So I'm going to go, and also Stripe accepts payments in cents. So if I passed over 20, it would think that's 20 cents, not $20. So I have to go ahead and convert that to a integer and then make it a multiple of cents. So I'm going to change this to pledge in cents. So in order to do that, I'm just going to parse int, again, for my pledge amount, base 10, because we're working in our standard number format here. And then I'm going to times it by 100, because Stripe accepts payments, US dollar payments in cents. We can then pass that to our Stripe payment intent. So we know how much to try to charge this payment method, aka our credit card. We then want to pass in the currency. So again, this is going to be a US based one. So I'm just going to hard code it to US dollars. But this is where, especially with those payment intents or during the checkout experience, you might want to add a custom field here to accept the payment currency as well if you want to do it in a different currency other than US dollars. I can set the confirm flag to true, and this will automatically confirm that the payment is correct. So instead of doing that, checking that the zip code matches the credit card, the username matches the credit card, doing all of those additional credit card checks just to kind of push it through. Because again, we're also going to be using a test credit card. I'm not going to actually give you guys my credit card information. I can set that flag to true, and it makes it a really simple one-time payment, one-time handshake. And then the last flag I want to set is error requires action true. So that way, if there's any error with this payment intent, so even though I'm trying to force it through right now by setting that confirm flag to true, if there is any actual error that comes up from the payment method, I still want it to error out to hit my catch here and actually return an error and not actually process a bad payment. So if there is anything that doesn't work with this transaction, it will go ahead and error it out for me. So with that, I think we are all set to go and we can actually try this out. So as I mentioned, we have a preview mode here. You can think of this like as your QA experience. So if I flip over to preview mode, I'm going to go back to my home page here. We can again go ahead and take a look at this. So if I try to continue with $10, I'm going to get that notification that pledge is too low. You can display this to a user either in an error message below or maybe a pop-up box explaining a little bit in more detail about why you require a pledge of a certain value, any sort of way that you want to make sure that user experience is clear and consistent while also making sure that you're benefiting your business as best possible. So this is just for testing purposes and time purposes. We put it here in our console. I'm going to go ahead and update that to 20. We're going to go ahead and continue. We'll get to our payment page here. I'm going to go ahead and pass in my information. And then I'm going to go ahead and pass in my fake credit card number. Pass in my credit card date and my CV code. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit pay. So we got a successful message here saying, thank you for supporting this project. Your payment has been accepted. So that means that our payment was successful. If you ever wanted to check to make sure that this was actually happening on the Stripe's end too, Stripe has a great dashboard that shows you all of this information to show you all of your payment processing and transactions as well. So it's really easy to keep track of that. If we want to make this actually error out, if I go ahead and change this to a year in the past, we should not be able to continue with this payment. We should see an error in this case. So as you can see, we didn't get the successful pop-up message here. We got an error response that we can see here. So Stripe is passing back an error saying the card is has an invalid expiry year. So we're able to stop that payment process as it's trying to go through it, because we are hitting that error message and we're saying, okay, there's an issue with the credit card. Let's not actually try to process this payment. And we are able to stop that payment process before we try to go ahead and create the payment in as well. So you're able to add a lot of different checks and balances with Stripe and with these multi-handling payment processes, which makes then you can then present this information back to the end user. And it is nice and detailed here, the error handling. So you can actually just straight up tell the user that their credit card is expired and we can't actually process it. Maybe there's an issue with the credit card. I think there's even some insufficient funds handling as well. So you're able to utilize these error messages on your front end. Then once you pass them back, because we returned that, we caught it and then returned it, and inform the user of why there was any issues with the payment and make sure that they can correct it. So again, you could present this in an error message below that payment button, maybe in a pop-up box, or just any sort of other error handling that you might expect from a user experience to make sure that users kind of understand what's going wrong and what's going on in that payment process. Another thing you may have noticed is we also enabled and disabled the payment button. So this is another thing where sometimes maybe users click too quickly. So by enabling and disabling the button, you can go ahead and minimize the accident rate of users accidentally trying to process multiple payments at once and overcharging your end users. So things to consider when building out that payment experience is if we go back into our code, you can go ahead and see that. When a user does click on that payment button, we we go ahead and automatically disable it to, again, minimize the amount of accidental duplicate payment processing to, again, create a positive user experience where we don't get a lot of emails or calls from end users saying, hey, I noticed that my credit card charged me twice for this product that I tried to purchase. We're able to kind of create that custom experience to make sure that users don't have any sort of negative experience while building and paying for things on our websites. So this is what I wanted to show you guys for building out a custom payment solution. It's really nice and easy. The UI is drag and drop and really easy to work with those Wix APIs, like the $W that we talked about. And we were able to incorporate additional payments like Stripe into our page. And with that, I'm going to switch back over here. And I have seen some questions come in. I apologize. We had another webinar running at the same time, so my colleague couldn't join us. But I think now is a good time to start with questions.
Yeah, great presentation, Meredith. Before we get to the questions real quick, we have a feedback survey that just popped up for the attendees. If you want to click, take the survey, and while we're doing the Q&A, if you want to fill out that survey, that would be great. So why don't we go and start with the questions? The first question we have, Meredith. So you were doing a custom payment solution today. How do we do this with an OOTB stores solution?
Sure, yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and close that. Yeah, if you guys don't mind filling out that survey, that's super helpful for us, because one of my jobs as a developer advocate is actually to take your guys' feedback and present it to our board of the Wix Code program. So we're always happy to hear feedback and would love to hear from anybody. In terms of using an out-of-the-box store solution, so if you were using Wix's out-of-the-box store solution, for example. So maybe if you went to our Dev Week talk and you saw me working on my plant store, I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. So this is, sorry, too many tabs here. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my plants store. If you may remember this from Dev Week, if you were there. We can also incorporate this by utilizing our APIs that we have for our different verticals. So if I go ahead and pull up our API reference, if I go to the stores reference, the stores reference has a get current cart feature. And in that get current cart feature, we actually have a subtotals, a totals section here, which tells you the subtotal, and you can utilize that. So in this case, if I go to my cart, and let's go ahead and remove these. I'll go back to my shop. I'm going to go ahead and add these green stems to my cart, view cart. And when I actually go to view my cart, I'm going to get a notification about please meet the cart minimum. So cart minimum is 25. And I can ask the users to go back to the shop to meet that. And then when we actually go and look at the code for that, I should have had that one already up as well. There we go, this one. All we need to do is utilize that Wix Stores API to get our current cart. No, of course I have network issues right now.
That's Murphy's Law, Meredith.
I know, right?
Right.
Okay, there we go. So I'm going to go to my cart experience here. On my cart experience, so our $W on ready is what fires when our UI is actually visible to the browser. So this is kind of like there's elements on the page that we can start working with notification. So when our page is ready, I can go ahead and check cart minimum. That function is going to call get current cart, which is going to get the Wix Stores current cart information. I can look at the totals object and look at the subtotal, or maybe if you are okay with including shipping and taxes in that as well, you can do your actual total there and see if it is too low or not. And if it is too low, we can go ahead and throw up a light box to block a user from actually getting to the cart experience and continuing checkout, because with Wix's out-of-the-box store solution, you can't actually customize the checkout box. It's like a whole pane here. So what we can do is to counteract that is use a light box to block the cart page that gives them information about why that total, or why they can't get to the cart page and what the minimum total is, to then send them back to the store to try to continue to purchase more. or even that case, if you saw in our Dev Week demo, we did a cross sell. So that would also be a great opportunity to cross sell a product, to be like, hey, you're not at the cart minimum, but if you add this product that you're trying to promote, that could be a great way to get them to the cart minimum as well. So it's pretty easy, just a little bit of a different experience, a little bit of a different API that you're working with when you're doing the out-of-the-box cart solution.
Great. So we have 4 more questions. We're going to go with Mohammed's first. It's a singular question. How safe is it to process the storage of credit cards? What are the security features, and how are the credit cards stored in your system?
So these credit cards are not stored in our system first and foremost. So we are not processing any of that. That's why we are sending it over to Stripe. Stripe is doing all of the payment, credit card information storage, and making sure that that information is not visible from any end users. In terms of other security measures, Wix payments security measures are completely secure as well. And you can also incorporate out-of-the-box Stripe payments utilizing Wix payments there too. So that is going to go through a, I believe it's called, there's a term for it, PSL, SSL. But it is an entirely secure payment solution that Wix does require us to meet the standard of whatever that payment security threshold is. I forget exactly what the acronym is for it. So it is an entirely secure solution. We are not storing any of, if you're using a third-party payment solution, we are not storing any of the payment information on our side. Yes, sorry, there's someone put in the chat, PCI. We are PCI compliant. We do not store any of that information on our end. If people are doing payments through a Wix payment store, it is not exposed as a database. So as you can see here in databases, our stores has information about who has purchased things, who has maybe subscribed to things, different members about that, but none of that payment information is publicly visible here from the developer pane. So it is not easily accessible or publicly accessible information in any way, shape, or form. We are making sure that everything that you do in terms of payments is PCI compliant. And then again, in this case, when we built out our payment solution, as you can see, I didn't store any of that credit card information in a database here. I sent it over to Stripe, and Stripe does all of that storage on its end to make sure that I'm not actually manipulating any of the card data too. Additionally, Stripe has a widget, a UI widget that you can utilize if you're concerned that is completely masked from the UI. So me as a developer, I can't actually touch anything inside of it to, again, provide additional layers of PCI compliance and security.
Terrific. So we have one from Juanita. We actually have 3 questions from Juanita. Can you show us how you handle your error from the user input, credit card error, or any exception handling using your credit card payments?
Yes. So what I did here is, this is an asynchronous call, as you can see here. So when submit payments does respond, I'm going to go ahead and wait for that response. And then I just did error logging here as well. I could add a text field and do something with that. I could pass it to the light. I could pass context to the light box and pop that up. But the error is automatically going to be handled. So on the front end, you need to make sure that when an error does come back from the function. So in this case, I only return if there's an error. So if there is any sort of response, that means we're getting an error response. And then I'm going to go ahead and handle it and make sure that I don't proceed with a positive case. And I do this by, if you go back over here, I only ever return when there's an error. So the only response I'm ever going to be returning to my UI is an error message. You can change this so it's different. You can utilize error codes instead. So errors always return specific codes. In this case, it returned a 402 if you saw that on the UI. So you can utilize those codes to also customize the error handling experience. Error handling is like one of those rabbit holes that we can definitely go down, but it's more of a long-winded answer. But in order to do my error handling here, what I did is I ensured that this function only ever returned if there was an error. If there wasn't an error, then we know that it was a positive case, because we're also using async await. So async await means that we're not going to proceed through the code unless this await returns. So it's a great way to make sure that everything kind of happens in sequence here too. And then we only return the error. So we never actually returned the Stripe client's response unless it was an error. So that's how we can utilize that on the front end, where we have a space. We have a space to see if there is a response, and if there is a response, I know it is an error in this case. But a lot of people utilize codes here. So it's like if it's error. Or you can throw an error instead. That's another option. So I just returned. You can throw an error instead, and then instead of .then, you would use .catch. Right? It's either .catch or .error. Or yeah. Sorry, I'm blanking on it. So there's a lot of ways to do error handling. I could do a whole webinar on error handling.
Oh, so Juanita probably could check back with you or connect with you afterwards to collect. I imagine you have some additional information in some of your blogs and different things that for some resources that you can get to her, correct?
Yes.
Terrific. So here's the second of her 3 questions. Can you also show us how to keep user data inside your backend pipeline? Any security measure at Wix APIs?
So our pipeline to our database is secure. And then if you want to store any of that information, it's really easy if I go over to Wix data. So we have an API for Wix data. This is our version of SQL, for lack of a better explanation. And in this case, it's really easy to insert data. So you just go ahead and create a JSON object, because remember, we're working with a MongoDB. So even though it's going to look like a relational database, it's actually a structured or a document-based database. So you can just utilize JSON to pass objects into your database. So you go ahead and just create a JSON object. And in that JSON object, you provide that name value pairing. And then we can use the insert functionality from the Wix data API to insert into our databases. And this enables us to add any additional database. If you do need to store anything, I would not recommend storing credit cards, because as I mentioned, like the databases are publicly visible to the developers. You can have admin only databases. So maybe I would check on like the security compliance of that. I don't think that's going to be PCI compliant. Or even like GDPR compliant to store stuff like that. You would definitely want to check on what you are storing of a user's data when you're trying to insert from an experience like this. But you can just utilize an insert function to make sure, or to easily add data to your database in a JSON format.
Okay, great. And then the last question, I want to let everybody know, this is our last question right now. If anybody wants to throw in an additional question, please feel free. Go ahead and do that. We have time just for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. I understand the payment method using asynchronous. Have you ever encountered a situation if synchronous method is used? If there are any differences in coding, how do you handle synchronized design compared to asynchronous design?
So synchronous design is going to slow down your user experience, right? Because you have to wait for every single thing to return to move on to the next thing. So when it comes to payments, synchronous design would actually probably be an acceptable solution, just because you don't want to move forward with any sort of other process while you're working on a payment. Maybe if you want to like throw up a loading screen, this is where synchronous design would become a problem. So asynchronous is going to be better for site performance, but payments is like kind of one of the only areas that I would say that synchronous design could be acceptable, but it is going to degrade your user experience a little bit, because it's going to synchronous design blocks any other code from running on your page. So if you need to be doing anything else while the payment is processing, so for example, as you mentioned, you might also want to store some data. If you're trying to store that data while you're also trying to process a payment, and you choose to go with a synchronous design, you're not going to be able to do those simultaneously. So your user's going to experience a longer wait time on their end when trying to go through the payment process, which could lead to loss of user retention. They may give up on a process. They may not return to your store because it was a negative experience. So it is beneficial to do asynchronous design, because it does enable a more fluid user experience that is going to feel a little bit more seamless. it's not going to feel as slow as a synchronous process. But payments, if you're only doing a payment, this is probably like the one time I would say that synchronous payment processing, or sorry, asynchronous design would be acceptable, would be in payment processing.
All right. Well, it looks like we don't have any other questions, Meredith. Thanks for the great presentation. I was actually, I do a lot of webinars, and I was actually really paying attention and listening in. It was very good. I was very interested on the technology and your presentation. So I want to thank you very much for the presentation, and thank Corvid for the sponsorship of today's online learning session. And I just want to remind everybody that, again, that there is going to be a recording of this session that will be available. You'll be receiving an email through the Big Marker webinar system for access to that. So you'll gain access to it, and then you can forward it on to other coworkers who will then just need to give some general registration information, and they can then access the information as well. Meredith has put up a slide that has her email address and her Twitter handle. Please feel free to contact her with any additional questions, and she will get you any additional resources that Wix/Corvid has. And finally, the recording that I was just describing a moment ago will be available on our Dev Network content archive. So you can go to devnetwork.com and see all the content from our webinars, as well as selected content from our live as well as virtual events. So I do want to put a plug in for Developer Week New York, which is happening next week live. You can check that out at developerweek.com, as well as Developer Week February, San Francisco Bay Area February, which will be virtual. We're looking forward to a terrific event, probably somewhere around the neighborhood of around 200 speakers and about 50 sponsoring companies. So we look forward to having you all for that. And thank you very much, all of you, for participating. Meredith, again, thank you for the great presentation. And everybody have a safe and a great day. Bye now.
Bye. Thank you.